Let's start with President Obama's meeting just held this afternoon with his national security team. Did he deliver a tough enough call to action in the wake of the failed Christmas Day bombing plot? Pat Buchanan's an MSNBC political analyst, and Drew Westen is a professor of psychology at Emory University and author of The Political Brain. You're a smart guy, Drew. What's the president's problem? Why does he seem to be taking a lot of heat from all directions, especially right now?
I think in general, what we've seen from the president is just what you described, which is often too late, too soon. Coming on too, whatever that phrase is, he's a little too slow to react and typically waits until the damage has been done. In this case, I'm not sure that was the case. I thought he delivered a pretty strong speech today, but the problem was the conflicting message between him today and his Homeland Security Chief, Janet Napolitano, when this first struck, where her tone was very reassuring, don't worry, the system worked, and now today his tone is very different, but I thought he took a much better tone today.
Yeah, they're still paying for her comment that the system works when it's like a chicken in every basket. It sounded like something from the Hoover administration. Here's President Obama after the meeting today.
The bottom line is this. The U.S. government had sufficient information to have uncovered this plot and potentially disrupt the Christmas Day attack. But our intelligence community failed to connect those dots, which would have placed the suspect on the no-fly list. In other words, this was not a failure to collect intelligence. It was a failure to integrate and understand the intelligence that we already had. The information was there. Agencies and analysts who needed it had access to it, and our professionals were trained to look for it and to bring it all together. Now, I will accept that intelligence by its nature is imperfect, but it is increasingly clear that intelligence was not fully analyzed or fully leveraged. That's not acceptable, and I will not tolerate it.
Would that have been a better statement on St. Stephen's Day, the day after Christmas, 10 days ago?
Oh, it sure would. That is tough. There's some anger in that, Chris. There's a sense of, look, let's get to the bottom of this. Somebody dropped the ball here. This is a grave situation. Yeah. 300 people could have been scattered across Detroit area, and I'm going to find some answers. Somebody didn't connect the dots, and I'm going to find out whether the information didn't get to DNI, the Director of National Intelligence, or whether the dots were not connected there. I think out of this, you're going to see possibly...
But didn't you know, Pat, as an observer and reporter, didn't you know everything he just said?
Sure.
A couple of days right after Christmas. You didn't have to wait till the 5th of January.
No, as soon as you heard the guy had this manufactured bomb sewn into his underwear, he's a 23-year-old Nigerian, somebody has said
You know all that fact. You know all these facts.
Well, you can logically...
You knew that we had picked up information in Yemen.
Sure.
Just a few days after. You knew the kid's father had warned us.
Exactly.
More than a week ago. Why did he give the speech today?
Well, that's just the problem, as Drew was saying. He is late. He is too little, too late. I think this is a good move. I think he is on top of it now, Chris. But he's been damaged by these 10 days. And I know Cheney's been hit. But I'll tell you, Cheney has stung him. And if he stung him to this action, that's a good thing.
Well, a broken clock is right twice a day. That would include Dick Cheney. Drew, your thoughts about this timing issue. Is this endemic? Is this, to use the term all over the place right now, systemic? This slowness and rather coolness with regard to Fort Hood. The president arrived several days later and was part of that service down there, appropriately so. Many people thought he was a bit too detached. He didn't really feel emotionally connected to the event that was about our service people getting killed in the line of duty. He didn't seem to act emotional, as most presidents would in those circumstances. Is it timing? Is it emotion? Detachment? Size it up.
I think you're right on the money on
no,
really
I'm asking you. You'll notice there's an interrogate. I'm asking you because I know what you think, and I'm asking you to define it.
Well, I think it's both timing and emotion, and I'm really with Pat on this. But I think this is a, as the president would use the word, a systemic problem. We saw this on health care, where there was no passion in anything that he did until it got to be October and the plan was almost run into the ground. There wasn't a coherent story that he told on health care, really until October, when he decided to say, okay, I guess there's some problems here. Let me tell you about what they are. It took him a long time to get there, and I think that he's a guy who comes across as he can be phenomenally passionate. That's what won him the election. Right. But he's preferred to run to govern much more like much more like Dukakis.
His problem is he is not a natural executive at all. He is not engaged. He is diffident. He is, quite frankly, he is academic. He is professorial. He is aloof. And even on health care, the Tea Party people almost dynamited that thing during the summer. Then he did come back and give his speech. But then he says, okay, Harry Reid's got it. He just doesn't seem to be terribly
Okay, let's talk about that executive role. And I want you to jump in here, Drew, because I think we're on to something very narrow and very particular and pointed here. Something like the White House security, and those grifters broke in. Small matter, you could argue, because nothing really went wrong. But they did break in. They had no right to be there. It took him the longest time. Now, Sally Quinn, who writes about things in Washington, said that today in the Washington Post on the op-ed page, he should have fired somebody. It should have been Mark Sullivan, head of Secret Service. Somebody, Desiree Rogers, in charge of social life. That was a case. Then the other thing with this thing with the airplane almost being blown up. Nobody seems to be, you don't get a sense, he's the boss. Look, he's got some people like Rahm Emanuel enforcing him, and nobody gets sledgehammered.
Well, let me tell you, this is now, I know you might not.
You know what Sally said?
Like
the president gets blamed every time.
You might not like this comparison, but Nixon would have called in Haldeman if those two people had walked in there. What went on, Bob? What happened? You get to the bottom of this, heads roll. And Haldeman, they would have been right on top of this. I know they ran into a lot of trouble, but I'll tell you, that was the best run White House I have ever been in, first term of Nixon. I mean, when Nixon demanded this kind of action, he would not have been satisfied.
Watergate was first term, though.
Well, Watergate was first term. There's no doubt about it. Okay, you can laugh about it.
I'm not.
What I'm saying is, Bob Haldeman was an executive.
He was decisive.
And I don't know that. And Rahm Emanuel's a congressman and a guy that runs around making money on Wall Street. Let me get a little dispassionate from you there, Drew, and that is this question: executive ability. This president was not a governor. He was not a mayor. He's not used to cashing the checks or signing them. He's not used to being there when there's a 4-alarm fire downtown. My idea of a president, my idea of a mayor, a police chief is exactly the same. In fact, the job I've always wanted was police commissioner of Philly, okay? I want to be the guy standing on the curb when there's a big fire. I want to be there when the reporters come by and say, what happened here? Do you got things under control? How many engines you got here? You going to put it out in an hour or what? I want to see a president on the job. I love that stuff. I thought Bush was out to lunch during Katrina. I think that really killed his presidency and his role in history because he wasn't there. He was somewhere in Crawford with his feet up drinking near beers. I don't know what he was doing, but he wasn't on the job. This president was in Hawaii getting some sun. Fair enough, but it looked terrible. It looked terrible. When there's a big fire, the mayor ought to be there.
Well, you're absolutely
right.
That's my
thought. What's your thought? You're the brain here. You wrote about the political brain. Give me some brain.
I just write about brains.
Well, tell me what his brain should have been doing.
Well, you know, what his brain should have been thinking back to was the other Bush who came out on September 12th with that foghorn. Because that's the Bush who actually captivated the American people.
I like that guy.
Because he showed the passion. You know, he was right there, and every American stood by him. And
then he let Cheney beat him up like a Pac-Man. And Cheney and the neocons grabbed that little hero that we loved with the firefighter and turned him into a little agent of their causes.
Let me give you another example.
We all know that now.
Let me give you another example, Chris. Robert Kennedy. If something had gone wrong and Jack Kennedy calls up and said, who found out, find out, he would have been all over it. He would have been all over it. Yeah. Lyndon Johnson, what happened here? And he would have been right on top of it immediately. But to be out there
I think, okay, here's the problem. Can a president who's naturally dispassionate, I've been accused of being yesterday by saying he's Ray Milland because he's so calm, he never gets ruffled, he never sweats like Pat and I do, he never shows the passion of leadership. Can he lead without passion?
No, I mean, you can't lead without passion. And the reality is that you can't be motivated without passion. Passion is what gets us to move. And if he can't get that passion, if he can't get worked up, he's not going to be able to lead, and he's not going to be able to motivate.
Well, he's not going to change. People don't change, though, Drew.
Passion.
All my life, I keep asking people, women who want their husbands to change, husbands who want their wives. I always say to people, have you ever met anybody, Drew, who's changed?
Chris,
I mean, that's my question.
Passion is a reflection of conviction and belief.
Right.
I mean, you get passion because you really care about it. You can't keep faking it if you don't have
Ronald Reagan did not lose his temper often, but people knew where he was
passionate.
Right. Well, what's the difference?
When you go into a meeting with Ronald Reagan, he'd start... Go ahead, Drew.
No, Drew.
I was going to say, Pat, that I fully agree with you. This is where I think the real crux of the issue is, which is that no one really knows where Obama stands on virtually anything because he doesn't express his passion on anything.
Well, let me stop the music here.